There we go. Now it's recording. Well, welcome everybody to the inaugural year, the inaugural event of the Loudest Silence, an Anti-Racism Commemoration Open Mic. I hope you enjoy my lights in the back because, this is supposed to be an open mic, so trying to make this into a fun experience. The main part of the name, the Loudest Silence, comes from my lovely Vice President of Student Affairs, Camille Rose Tabacla, or as I call her, Camille. The other parts of the name of this event, an anti-racism commemoration open mic, comes from three places. For anti-racism, last year we heard a huge call from students, faculty, and staff about the importance of anti-racism for our campus community, about the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and about the importance of recognizing the ongoing trauma of colonization on Black, Indigenous, and people of color in North America. Last year, we saw a Black man who died in front of us across Turtle Island by a police officer. And in Canada, we saw Black women and men brutalized by police as well. Last year, we saw Indigenous folks from chiefs and women also being brutalized by police. Asian folks and the anti-Asian mentality that's been prevalent within the last few weeks, but especially during this pandemic, where Asian folks have been condemned by prominent people in North America, discriminated against, and viewed as a point of blame for the pandemic that we find ourselves in right now. And these are only a few things to mention. Students spoke out despite the pandemic. In the protest that occurred, I think it was on campus last year at the end of summer, around September, I believe. And this is how I attempt to honor your sacrifices, as well as the incredible display of resistance to racism in our community. For the commemoration part of the name, this comes from the Principles of Reconciliation and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, particularly Principle number 3, which states, quote, "Reconciliation is a process of healing of relationships that requires public truth sharing, apology, and commemoration that acknowledges and redresses past harms," end quote. That spoke to me significantly. Reconciliation, or to reconcile, comes from the Latin word reconciliare, I believe. I don't know, maybe the English folks can criticize me. Look at you, Lee. And what that means, and I'm probably getting this wrong, the pronunciation wrong, but what it literally means is to bring together again. So I ask myself, have we ever been together? Can we ever be together? According to the scholars of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it's possible. It's possible if we can look at what we've done and how we can do better, not only for ourselves, but for our community. Which brings me to the use of open mic. Tonight, you'll be given the opportunity to hear from Black students, from Indigenous students, and students of color. They will present poetry, spoken word, music, and a part of themselves here in our inaugural event of the Loudest Silence and Anti-Racism Commemoration Open Mic. So thank you for viewing the streaming link or watching the recording of this event. This is all very new to me, so I'm sorry if I run into any technical issues, but I honestly don't trust anyone else's internet besides my own, so maybe this is a good thing. So today we are joined by our BIPOC student participants, and they're just getting ready here. But we're also joined by key leaders in our campus community. Myself, Spirit River Striped Wolf, the president of the Students Association of Mount Royal University's Representation Executive Council. We have Phil Warsaba, who is the vice provost and associate vice president of students in the senior administration of Mount Royal University. We have Lee Easton, president of the Mount Royal Faculty Association, and Michelle Lugolu, president of the Mount Royal Staff Association. Together, the four of us represent the campus community. And so in that order, I'll ask each representative to say a few words and stick around because after the presentation from students, we'll have our own little unscripted debrief and discussion. So, Phil, how's your day been? And also, what are your thoughts about this event?
Thanks, Spirit. My day has been good. It has been a busy day of meetings, and I am thrilled to be here. I really do very much appreciate the invitation. I wanted to start by thanking you, Spirit, and for the Students Association of Mount Royal University for putting this event on. I view it as one of the signature events of the Cultures of MRU month that is currently ongoing. I feel really strongly that safe spaces for dialogue and a building of awareness and understanding of each other are truly critical elements of Mount Royal's continued growth and evolution as an institution of higher learning. And we are a post-secondary institution that has been evolving for a number of years. My role here today in many ways is the role of a student, and it's one that I like to embrace. I'm conscious of my own identities, of my positionality, and the various privileges that these identities have afforded me. And so I join you today really with the intention to honor the experiences of students, which I'm very grateful to be a part of, and to listen, to learn, and to understand as much as I can. So thank you very much for inviting me to the event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. And now, Lee, have you been enjoying the sunshine outside? And also, I have to ask, what are your thoughts about this event tonight?
Well, I can tell you that I've been sitting at my desk / kitchen counter since 8 o'clock this morning, looking out longingly at the sunshine, and occasionally asking my husband what the temperature is outside so that I can be even further envious of the fact that I'm not out there. But other than that, I am fine. And like Phil, so honored that you asked me and the association to be a part of this important event. I guess just maybe to start more formally, I'd like to say good afternoon to all of you out there. Thank you for making time to be a part of this important commemoration of things that we need to talk about, I think. And so I want to thank the SA for having taken the initiative and to put this together. So my name is Lee Easton. I am the president of the Mount Royal Faculty Association. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a white cisgendered male, but I'm also an out queer man and perhaps the association's first out president. So I say all of that because when Spirit River came and talked to me about this, I actually said, "Are you sure you want it to be me?" Because I thought perhaps it might be better if I made space and place for someone else. But Spirit River and I talked it through, and at the end of it, we agreed that because as the elected member of the MRFA, I'm the person who's authorized to speak for the association, and it's appropriate for me to participate as a representative of faculty. And I'm very honored and privileged to be here to listen today, and as Phil said, and I'll say again, to learn, right? I think that we all know at Mount Royal that we have got a lot of change to do in order to become the welcoming, inclusive, equitable university that we aspire to be. And certainly the Mount Royal Faculty Association has been engaged this year in its own work to figure out how we can better support our BIPOC colleagues and how we can also work to create those inclusive, safer spaces in our classroom for all students. I want to assure you that the association is committed to opposing all forms of discrimination, and we are opposed to all forms of racism, anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. And we are doing our best to ensure that our university is equally free of those insidious practices. But it will not, I want to say we have to do better, and I know we need to do better. But I also wanted to speak a little bit about why I wanted to be here on a personal level. And it's because, when we are thinking about an event like this, it's about relationship. And for me, it means being part of an effort to build, and I think perhaps more accurately, rebuild relationships with BIPOC students, and students from other equity-deserving groups. And so my presence here today is really partly a commitment to help enter into building better and perhaps even new relationships. One thing that's been brought to my attention about an event like this, and again, it came, I think, partly when I was speaking with Spirit River a bit about it, is that I see myself here really as a listener. And for me, listening is important. It reverses what I usually do, right? And what I'm doing right now, to be honest, which is talk, right? I'm not here to talk much today. I'm here to listen, and I'm here to learn, and I'm here to try to understand. I think it's an important piece for me as a representative of faculty and for myself to be here to listen to your stories, hear your words, hear your poetry and music. And I want to also say on a personal note that I'm expecting that I'm probably going to have moments where I see my experience overlaps with some of yours. You know, as a queer man growing up in a working class town in Northern Ontario and then coming to Alberta in the 1990s, when I was not accorded human rights under the government, and it was only by the order of the Supreme Court of Canada that I and other queers in this province were deemed to be humans under the Human Rights Act of this province. So I expect that there'll be moments where I will have some moments of identification, and I am, you know, wanted to know you to know that there will be those. So with that, I'm here in the spirit of building connection, relationship, spirit of reciprocity, and I'm ready to listen.
Definitely. Very well said. Thank you for your words, Lee. On the part where, you know, as presidents, we're kind of paid to talk, right? So anytime I can hear myself talk, I say it's a good day. And so now we have Michelle. So Michelle, I hope I didn't pronounce your last name wrong. I was practicing with my vice presidents last night. Like they're all like, you know, having green beers and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait, how do I pronounce her name again? So, you know, yeah, it's Lagulo, right?
It's Lagulo, yeah,
Lagulo,
and that's
Lagulo.
okay. You can call me anything, like my husband says, as long as you don't really suffer. So that's okay.
Love it. No, perfect. Yeah, so same question I asked the other folks. What are your thoughts about this event today?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start. And let me start with this. I've got my Kleenex handy here because I feel like it's going to be a particularly emotional event for me. It's I can't tell you how humbled I am, on top of being honored to be asked to be a part of this, because to what you said earlier, Spirit, it's the first. This is part of the process of reconciling and building relationships, rebuilding relationships, whatever we want to say. And so I've been a big advocate of Indigenous rights for a very long time, because in my former role in my life here, I've been here, by the way, 32 years. So my experience in 30 years has been with admissions and recruitment. So we've recruited students into Mount Royal, and I've been particularly proud of you know, what we've been able to offer students and the strides we've made in terms of building, you know, residence for families, trying to eliminate some of the barriers that, you know, have been in place, in particular for Indigenous students. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate and have a voice and dialogue with all of you and hear about your experiences. And first and foremost, I want to say, like, again, I come from a world and a culture where we're trying to unlearn what we've been taught, and this kind of a forum provides such an awesome opportunity for that. And so again, you know, we've got to shake off things like white privilege and white fragility, and sort of talk about what do those two things mean, right? I get privilege because my skin is white. But again, I can't make excuses or be defensive about that, because it's a reality, right? And so to what Lee was saying, there's not a whole lot about me that's really anything but female, in terms of, you know, what might be some of my barriers. Do I feel Do I feel threatened at nighttime when I'm walking by myself? Yes. Do I feel that same way in the middle of the day? No. And that for me is the difference, right? I think that there's a certain safety and, again, a privilege of who I am and what it means for me to walk the streets every day, which a lot of people don't get that experience or have that experience. And so what I'm most looking forward to here, I read something recently by an author named Rachel Drummond, and she said that, it's not up to BIPOC individuals to teach white people about racial inequity. But when you do, you shut up and listen and you don't talk back, right? You allow the opportunity to happen, you open yourself up, and you be ready for what you're about to hear and experience. And so again, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you that are participating today for sharing your experience and for sharing your life with us in terms of your challenges. And I will acknowledge that I have seen a lot of inequity on campus myself. Not a lot. Let me back up. Sorry, Phil. But I have seen it. And, as the staff association president, I want to say that we are committed to also supporting students, faculty, and staff in trying to, break down those barriers and stop those inequities and educate, because that's the big component. We're in university and we need to be educating ourselves around, the inequities that have happened over centuries of time. And so again, I'm rattling, but again, I want to just say thank you for this opportunity. I want to be able to support this. And the biggest takeaway for anyone who's also watching this is that, again, you make yourself aware, but it's what you do with this after you're done watching it. Go away and do something with this. And so with that, I just say thanks again for inviting me to be a part of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Yeah, all of this was brilliant. And I think none of us really know what to truly expect, except me and Janet know a little bit what to expect. We talked to the participants yesterday and make sure, that they're doing well and everything like that. But, for a lot of the viewers, we really don't know what to expect today. And other than that, we are here to support, uplift, and amplify the voices of BIPOC students. Please note that the content that we're sharing may be triggering for some folks, but I think it's really important to talk about this for a little bit. We're not attempting to make folks feel comfortable, but we're also not asking for folks to be in a panic state either. It's important to step into the uncomfortable stretch zone as we hear and amplify the voices that we hear tonight. I want to ensure that this space is a space where emotions can come out for not only for the viewers, but I think most importantly for the participants. This must be a space to be vulnerable and to feel free to have a moment of silence for a second. Let me catch my thoughts. Let me take a few breaths, and that's totally okay and totally to be expected, especially for this inaugural year as we're learning through all the different types of bumps to ensure that this pilot event is successful going forward. And hopefully next year, this can be an event that's in person. Also note that we do value the participants and their bravery and courage. Their mental health is priority to me. And so we do have Janet Miller from Counseling Services who has made herself available for the participants after the event. And, when they need to in the next few days. So I'm incredibly grateful for that service from Janet. I am, the other one thing I've read in my notes is that we also are paying our participants for taking the time out of their schedule to join us and to share this and to be brave and courageous. Some notes on some technical housekeeping stuff. I am moderating tonight, and the participants do know that they are told that they cannot directly name faculty, staff, or students. And so I will interrupt any participants who breaks that one rule or goes over their time significantly. And as well, because this is the first time I'm doing the streaming link and recording at the same time, we may run into some technical issues or even some empty spaces, as I mentioned. So I ask that you stay patient with us. Yeah, with that said, we do have our first participant because she does also have to run to class as soon as she's done. First of all, Courtney, how are you feeling right now?
Hi, I'm just like a little bit nervous, but I'm okay.
No, you're doing fine. Yeah, so I'm just gonna hand over the floor to you. Let me know if you need my support in any way.
Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Courtney. My pronouns are she, her, and I am originally from Delana, Northwest Territories. And I'm in my 4th year of child studies. So today I'm going to be sharing some of the beadwork that I have done. So I'll just present a tab. Where is it? Can everybody see that?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So, yes, so this is just some of the beadwork that I have done. For me, like, I started beading, like, getting back into beading this year. It just really helps me when I feel overwhelmed. And so, yeah, that's the message that I want to share, is that there should be, or that there should be more representation of Indigenous culture at MRU. I acknowledge and respect that we are on Treaty 7 territory, but like what I'm trying to say is that I'm from the Northwest Territories, and I know there are many other students who are also from the Northwest Territories, and it would be nice to see more representation of culture and traditions from the NWT. I know something for like something that I have experienced is in one of my classes, we had an elder come in and talk to my class, and the elder speaks Blackfoot. And during my break, my friend and I were going for a walk, and she asked me if my parents still speak Blackfoot. And I was kind of taken aback of her assumption that I spoke Blackfoot. Also, in my other class, we had a guest speaker from Nunavut who came in. She talked about life in the North, and some of the students were really interested in how life in the North it was, and how like they were really excited and like interested in hearing what she had to say. Yes, that's just like some of the stuff that I wanted to share.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Courtney. I think that's such an important message. And as someone that is Blackfoot, you know, I what that representation means for me, like when I go, and I know a lot of students haven't actually gone to the library yet, or actually haven't been on campus due to the pandemic, but it does mean a lot of significance when I see, for example, Blackfoot words next to certain terms in the library. And you know, when we talk about things like we all belong here, right? And having that kind of mentality and how we kind of carry ourselves as an institution. So I think that was a really incredibly important message that, you know, as much as I love, you know, Blackfoot culture and all of that, and there's a Blackfoot pride that's there, it's so important to be able to uplift the mosaic of Indigenous identities that exists throughout Canada. So thank you so much for that message, Courtney. And so if you have to take off to go to your class, I'll totally forgive you. But we'll talk soon. So I do have some form of a list of names here. So I'm just going to go down the list that I have. So the next person that I have is Diamond Reed.
Sorry, my computer's being extremely slow. But can everyone hear me?
Yes, and maybe
Okay,
I'll ask
perfect.
everyone to turn their cameras off. That'll probably help with bandwidth. Okay, go ahead, Diamond.
Thank you so much. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Diamond Reed. I'm 21 years old. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I'm a New Hulk, Jamaican, and German-Ukraine woman. I am mixed race. I first want to acknowledge that I do not speak for all mixed race students, but I want to use my privilege to stand up and encourage narratives for other experiences, or other people that are similarly experiencing BIPOC experiences. Like many multiracial people, questions about where I belong or what I am came predominantly from outside of my family, from being at home. These conversations came from strangers, colleagues, professors, and even other students. Whether that was through the topics that I researched or presented, how I presented myself, the events that I've hosted or have been part of, the clubs that I've been part of or haven't been able to be a part of. At one of my homes, my biracial mother never talked with me or my younger siblings about race. At another home, I wasn't allowed to communicate with my Indigenous family because it wasn't safe. At another home, my white stepdad's parents, the only grandparents that I've ever been allowed to know and that I live with now, have never wanted to have conversations remotely related to race. And at every stage of school that I've experienced and have been part of, including here, I've struggled to have those conversations or even to speak up about them. I've struggled to recognize not only if I was being discriminated against, but also if my actions were discriminatory. I lost my voice, I lost myself, and I'm still lost. My apparent racial ambiguity has confused people, made them uncomfortable even. I've been a puzzle that people have wanted to find the color in. And this gave me a certain level of guilt-covered camouflage in society, making me more privileged, safe, but also unseen. But being privileged and being multiracial do not always go hand in hand. One day I may be given preferential treatment because of my skin tone, or if my hair is straightened, not in its natural form. And the next day, me or my BIPOC loved ones experience discrimination because we are, after all, still Black or Indigenous, at least in someone's eyes. I soon realized that these behaviors were not products of a post-racial environment. No, it was actually quite the opposite. And these behaviors were products of privilege and white fragility. As Robin DiAngelo put it, these were insulated environments of racial protection built off of white expectations for racial comfort, while at the same time lowering the ability of its inhabitants to actually tolerate racial stress. Lowering my ability to understand and tolerate racial stress. And because of that, I wanted to speak up, but I didn't know how. I didn't know where I fit into the conversation. I wanted to speak up whenever I heard students speak about harmful stereotypes of Indigenous women or Black women. I wanted to speak up when a professor said that Indian is the correct term because that's what's written in the policy. I wanted to speak up when a prof said that universities don't need Indigenous ways of learning or acknowledgement because there's a development gap. I wanted to speak up when a prof said that land acknowledgements shouldn't be encouraged at a university, which resides on Treaty 7, because it's anti-business and it's anti-professional. I wanted to speak up when there was no BIPOC faculty from the Economics, Justice, and Policy Studies Department for an online panel discussion on the recent review of the Alberta post-secondary sector. I didn't speak up because I'm still in a gray area. Words of the past and present have made me feel like I'm a racial imposter. What are you? You're not really Native. You're not that Black. When it comes to participating in conversations about race and racial injustice, I still simultaneously feel underqualified to speak and bursting with things that I want to say. And although I'm lost, just like many other BIPOC students, we are all here in this educational environment to build supports for ourselves and others. This is yet just another home, and it's a place to feel welcome, to heal, to learn, and to be found. Thank you.
Wow, Diamond, that was so raw, so powerful. Especially this theme of feeling as like an imposter and how that affects the sense of worthiness, especially while still being a racialized student. Like, that's such an important message, and I'm so thankful for you to share that. And I guess one thing too, I forgot to also mention to let Janet kind of do an introduction. But Janet, anytime you want to jump in, you're free to do so as she turns on her camera. But yeah, that was an incredibly powerful message, Diamond. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll step on to the next person here. We have Sarah Nikoi. I'm hoping I'm saying your last name correctly. Is Sarah with us? Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. I'm just gonna set up my, because I'm gonna be reading off of some notes. I'll just set it up so I can see.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Sarah Nikoi. I'm Congolese. My pronouns are she, her, and I was reached out to by a friend to be here today to kind of share my experience as a visible Black woman that navigates the post-secondary world. So what I've chosen to present for you guys today is a poem by Maya Angelou called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and I'll go into an analogy of the poem so you guys understand why I chose this poem. So I'll start. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tired, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. So that was I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And I'll break down the poem and then I'll get into my experience as a student. So there's two birds in this poem. The first bird is free, and it represents the white American, or in our post-secondary context, I would say it represents the institution and the sort of settler mentality that's very apparent in MRU. And then the second bird is caged. It represents the Black American in the context that Maya Angelou wrote it. But I think it's safe to say that the way I'm presenting this poem within this context, it would represent the BIPOC students and the visible minorities and invisible minorities of MRU. So the free bird leads a life of dignity, grandeur, and infinite possibilities, but the caged bird leads a life of fear, longing, and subjugation. The caged bird continues to sink deeper and deeper into the negation of its very existence, but the caged bird still continues to sing for his desire for freedom. And I think that's what we've seen in this university, and that's what we'll continue to see today, despite not feeling represented in our classrooms, in our faculties, despite making complaints and having the institution not follow up with these complaints. You'll see that the caged birds, or the students that feel oppressed, whether it's because of the way that they present themselves or because of accessibility issues, they still continue to sing. They continue to reach out in hopes that one day their voices will be heard. So I thank you all for this opportunity today to get everyone to speak and to share their stories. And I'll dive in a little deeper about my own personal experience at MRU. And so someone reached out to me to come do this presentation, and I hadn't prepared a lot, but I know that I like poetry, and it would be easier for me to explain kind of my thought process and my experience through poetry. But in addition to this, I also came across a lecture by Dwayne Donald. He's a Blackfoot professor at the University of Alberta. So he did a lecture on Homo economicus and forgetful curriculum. So I think within the context of the university, it would be a useful thing to bring up as well. So one of the first things he says in this lecture, and you can find it on YouTube, and I can put the link in the chat as well. He says, if you're going to understand what I'm saying, you have to understand who I am. And I find that in the many faculties of the university, and even just speaking with the professors, there's not a lot of effort to understand the BIPOC student. And I think it's very important to, in order to actually understand what we're saying, in order to see the value in the fight and in us continuing to use our voices, you have to understand who we are as people. So those of you in the faculty who took time to attend this session today, thank you, because you're getting a glimpse of who we are, how we present ourselves, and what's important to us. And then he also says in this lecture that when you study curriculum, it has more to do with cultural assumptions or what knowledge we think deserves utmost worth. And just like Diamond said, that's very clear in this university, that the history and the ways of life of BIPOC students is not prioritized because it's deemed as unworthy. And this has been apparent not only in the way most profs choose to present their course material across all subjects, but also in direct conversations with profs who will straight up say, well, I don't see the importance of a land acknowledgement, or I don't see the importance of diving deeper into Indigenous history or Black history. So again, that goes to show that this is what is prioritized, or this is the pattern that has been prioritized in this university, and I think that's important to note. And that the curriculum, so the course content that professors bring forth, Dwayne Donald also says that it tells stories about the world and our place in it. And I think many people can relate in the university that our experience in multiple classrooms, whether it's even in sociology or, whether it's in across multiple faculties, a lot of times our place is made very clear that it's not a priority. And just to dive into some of my experiences, because I have been, I have had unfortunate experiences with professors. I have had professors interrupt their lessons to come and touch my hair, or to say how long, or to compare my hair to spaghetti, or when I have it in braids, which is inappropriate as well. I have had professors, because French is my second language, or French is my first language, English is my second language, and I have had professors accuse me of not being of a plagiarism without any grounds, because they think that since English is my second language, I shouldn't be able to be as well spoken as I am. And these are conversations that have that I've had with professors, and they've told me straight up that they don't believe that I am capable of providing such work because of an ESL background. And again, so that goes back to what Dwayne Donald says: if you're going to understand what I'm saying, you got to understand who I am. And we can continue, the caged birds in the universities can continue to sing, but there also needs to be an effort from the free birds who do get to see life from a different platform, from a different point of view. There needs to be an effort to understand who the person is, and then take a next step to understand what they're trying to say. So that's all I've prepared for today. Thank you again for the platform to speak. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the profs and the faculty that showed up today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wow, I was just taking some notes, and sometimes I'm a policy studies student, right? So like sometimes poetry just goes over my head, but like how you explained that was just so well said, and like the image that you drew for us was just so powerful. You know, that the cage of fear and longing and subjugation, and continuing to sing for freedom, and the importance of voices being heard is definitely the theme of today, because of that continued oppression, and how folks maybe within our campus community, as you've expressed, and even outside of our campus community, and how they doubt in our abilities. And I really like too what you said about you have to understand who we are. And I hope that this event allows for our voices to be heard. So yeah, that was just such a brilliant, I could say more, but that was such a brilliant way of explaining all of this. So thank you so much for sharing that. The next person I have on my list here, and I feel like I'm gonna mess up your name, which is really bad, because like we've known each other for a while, Tala Abu Hayane.
Oh, you said it so perfect. I'm actually so happy now. This is like the best thing to happen to me
Yay!
today.
That makes me so happy. How are you
Thank you,
doing?
everyone. I'm good. It's actually my birthday. So
Oh, happy birthday.
thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. I love that I'm doing this on my birthday. Public speaking and sharing my story is probably one of the most amazing things that I could ever do as a human. And I know that from sharing my stories as a BIPOC individual, I have encouraged someone today in the room that is going to be sharing their story as well. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for being here, and thank you, Spirit, for setting this up. It means a lot. But I'll go into what I'm sharing today. I'll be speaking in Arabic for probably the first part, and then I'll transition into English. Assalamu alaikum. أنا اسمي تالا أبو حيانة. My pronouns are she, her, and hiya, which is she in Arabic. I'm from Jordan, Al-Urdun, and I resettled here with my family 6 years ago on Treaty 7. In Arabic, my first name Tala means the little palm tree. My dad named me that because he loves nature, and he's actually working in nature. He's doing his PhD now in environmental design. And my last name, Abu Hayane, has history behind it. Last names in my culture are an indicator of your geographical and cultural lineage. I come from a clan of hostlers. It's a word that I learned today while I was writing this, which means those who care for horses. It doesn't necessarily mean that the clan used to care for horses or continues to care for horses, but that's the reference. Abu Hayyan comes from the lineage of the father of chemistry, Jabir ibn Hayyan. I am from a clan that originated in the south of Jordan, which is considered in the Levantine area, and the city is known as Ma'an. I'm often addressed as Miss Abu, which honestly doesn't mean anything in the context of it, which kind of pisses me off when I'm reading emails. You know, I took the time to email someone, and when they're getting back to me, the simplest thing, which is to address someone correctly, they were incapable of doing that. And that's with making sure to double check every form that I fill out, every application that I submit, twice or even sometimes 3 times. And I always leave in the comments section of how my name is written. It is 2 syllables, Abu and Hayane, and there's a space between them. And I state that every time. This is all unique to me as a person until I was told that my name is unusual, and that I should not take offense when my name is mispronounced incorrectly, whether it's addressed in lectures or emails or in person. And that was said to me by a faculty member that, again, said, my name is unusual. And to me, it was always unique, not that it's unusual. My name is more than just Tala Abu Hayane. It is my story. It is the fact that I wrote this piece today in Arabic before I wrote it in English. It is the fact that I speak in English, but my mind speaks in Arabic. It is the fact that I have to understand things in Arabic before I understand them in English. It is taking twice the time to do an assignment because I often catch myself writing my English thoughts in Arabic. It is truly unusual that I am speaking to you right now, but my mind speaks in Arabic. If I can perform so well with a bilingual mind, if I have to learn words sometimes in both languages in order to understand them and grasp the concept of them, then so can you simply ask me how you should pronounce my name and address me correctly. Although I am tired and fed up, I will repeat again, as many times as it takes. My name is Tala Abu Hayane. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's ridiculous. For, don't take offense that, if folks can't say your name appropriately and all of those different kind of things. I think the message that you shared here that, honoring our language first and where we come from is so important. And that's something that at least my Blackfoot elders and I've talked to a lot of other elders in other Indigenous communities, and how language is just so stressed as something so important. And at first I used to think like, oh, it's just a language, right? Like, just speaking English, it's probably more useful anyways. But like, once I did more research, like, people I don't think realize just how much our culture and how culture is imbued in the language, how we talk to our children and how we talk to ourselves. I think that's, there's just so much richness in language, and it's so important that we do honor where we come from and the language that we have.
I would just like to share something else.
Yeah.
I think it's this realization how my language is so important to me came to me when the lockdown happened last winter. I was truly not speaking English, and it was only that 1 hour, 2 hours of the day when I would be speaking English during my lecture or even just listening to English. And I realized that I still speak Arabic in my home, and when we say mother language, it's truly like a mother's hug. Speaking in my own language brings me that closure that I need. Sometimes when I need to express my emotions, I write in Arabic, I speak in Arabic, I cry in Arabic, I laugh in Arabic. So when I say things, sometimes it's with the mindset that I'm speaking it in my language. I'm transferring that passion and that history to you as a person. So understanding someone's background, and like Diamond said and Sarah said, that you have to understand the person that is being in front of you to understand who they are as a person. You have to come in with the mindset that they have a language, they have an identity that you should acknowledge. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tala. Yeah, so I just quickly, I was running in interviews all day today, so I'm just providing my folks here in the group with the list that I have here for the remaining folks. This next one, I was trying to look for my light because like I feel like this deserves like a light change, but I can't find my light for my. Oh, here it is. Change my light. There we go. We're moving on to something else here. We have Joe Plant, and he's going to perform He's going to show us a little bit of a performance that he did for this event. Joe, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
There you are. Take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Spirit. And thank you so much to everybody else that came before me. So brave, such brave students to come here and talk about these issues. And there's going to be so much more after me, and I'm looking forward to hearing them as well, hearing their voices being heard. But yes, I'm Joe. I'm Joe Plant. I'm Cree in Salish Kootenai, but I was gifted a Blackfoot name, Asabi Bumawa, or Asabi Buma. And it means one who plants seeds. I was gifted this name by a Blackfoot elder, Roy Bearchief. But this song that I'm going to be sharing with you, it's about my Indigenous identity as well. It's how I feel about my relation to the land. So I grew up here, 2 hours away in Lethbridge, and then I came to Calgary, but I grew up in the urban setting or city of Lethbridge, but so all my siblings, they're Blackfoot. They're from Kainai or Gaina. So I would grow up going out on weekends out to standoff, out to Kainai, and I would go back and forth between public school and out there, and I never really felt like I belonged. I'm Cree, so I didn't really fit in around there. And when I was at school, I was the only one with brown skin, red skin. So it was kind of hard figuring out who am I, all my identities, my orientations. But I think my journey in solving that really started to come together while I came to MRU, actually. Before then, it felt like my heart was like a snow globe, all shaken up. But as I was going through my journey at MRU and talking to new people and exploring my own identity and making friends with like our amazing president, Spirit, and other such individuals, that snow globe started to kind of settle, and I kind of reconciled who I was as an Indigenous person, as a Cree person. And I really love, I'm going to try to say your name, Tala Abu Hayena. I love that you're talking about like, know me as an individual. And I think that's just as important on a nation level. I love that we're moving away from, Indigenous and umbrella terms like that. And we're starting to gravitate more towards, identifying those specific nations. There's so much beautiful indigeneity. There's so much, uniqueness within BIPOC culture. And yeah, I really think that needs to come through. So I guess what my message is, I want all of you BIPOC students, all you BIPOC individuals to share your story. Make sure that story comes through. There will be people that will try to diminish you. But yeah, you gotta pull through. Your voice needs to be heard. So that's kind of what I'll be doing with this song that I'm about to share with you. Yeah, so it's called The Cliff. I would really like everyone to kind of pay attention to the lyrics, put a lot of thought into it. I haven't recorded this song quite yet, but this is the first time it's ever going to be heard. So I'm really excited about that, to be sharing this. But mostly I'm really excited that I'm able to share my art, unabashedly, authentic, not afraid to share how I feel on so many different levels. But anyway, I'll get to it. So thank you so much for having me here, and I'll mute myself here in a sec.
So we just got to go through the share screen process for this as well. Let me know, Joe, if you need any help with that. Looks like it's coming through. And go for it.
Hello, this is called The Cliff.
while we suffer. I've been displaced for so long. My identity is fractured, and it pains me to sing songs, 'cause I don't know what I'm after. Oh, 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 the cliff calls my name. Oh, 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 the cliff calls my name. Oh, 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 the cliff calls my name. Oh, 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 oh. My mind is a cliff, and my heart is a bitter buffalo. Have perspective shift, give my life up to this great flow. Thank you.
Incredible. That was beautiful. You can't, I don't know if you folks can see it, but Janet's like using the raise hand feature to clap. That was beautiful. Joe, that was amazing. Like, I think your music, it just said so much. And I know you asked us to really try to listen to the lyrics. It's hard for me not to just like get up and start dancing though, but I feel like it also tells about that yearning as part of the message. And it reminded me a lot of the poem that Sarah Nikoi shared about the singing for freedom. And I thought that was so incredible. I don't know if you have any other last comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody here in the comments on our end. And yeah, like we just got to keep going. We got to keep thriving, resilience. And yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That was Joe Plant. Where can folks find your music?
Oh yeah, so I'm on Spotify. I have one song released. It's called Destiny. And I haven't recorded this song, but I'm recording it now. So that will be released in a couple months here, which I'm really excited about. As well, I have a band called Cloud Colossus, and we will be releasing a bunch of original music and stuff like that. We're really rad. We make you dance, but if you want to listen to the lyrics, there's something else there too.
Nice. Well, everyone, look out for Joe Plant. Perfect. Thank you so much. I did see a hand. I don't know if that hand is still, if someone wants to share anything, but I didn't see the hand until it disappeared. But I will just continue on with the list here. The next we have the fabulous Michelle Gladu. Hey, Michelle, how are you doing? I think you're still a bit muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing really good. Went for a walk with my daughter today at the bird sanctuary. Beautiful. A lot of geese fighting there. So.
Oh, geez, it's a bad neighborhood.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. That's a Cree name that was gifted to me, which means yellow rattle woman. I am of Cree heritage. I'm from, I was born and raised in Calgary, but my family is from Calling Lake, Alberta, Northern Alberta, Treaty 8 territory. So there was just a few things I wanted to talk about. I was making like a nice little graph here kind of situation of a circle, the circle of how we feel or how I've felt. And for myself, I actually did not learn anything about Indigenous history or about what a Gladu report was even until I came to university. And I've always kind of felt like my last name was a bad word, just in that retrospect. Oh, you're a Gladu. And from an opposite end, I did not learn anything about my heritage, my language, or my culture until I gave birth to my daughter. I have a 3.5-year-old little girl. So the experiences that I've felt. So I wanted to start off the circle is when learning about history, as my mother was also a residential school survivor, and it was still something we did not discuss. The content was very triggering, and it creates a lot of feelings, and it doesn't get easier. It gets easier to cope with as you go through, but it makes a lot of sense why classes have been really hard. So noticing that lack of empathy in classes sometimes, that's what it felt like. I'm being taught this and almost felt like I'm being watched to sit and squirm and see how I'm going to react. Almost as if this is to elicit an emotional response. So in those moments where I felt that, I have gone to the Inniskim Center, where a lot of us Indigenous peers, friends, have gone to feel safe, to feel connected. And it was there that I was learning about community, about culture, and about smudging and how to pray and unpack these feelings that I felt in my classes. And it was about feeling safe. And in those moments where you feel safe and you start unpacking or openly discussing your feelings, you can start triggering somebody else. And that's the beginning of that same cycle, regardless if it's in class or speaking with my peers. And in those moments when we're being triggered or triggering someone else, we have moments of lateral violence amongst our own communities, within families, within faculty, and it makes it that much harder to sit and endure that. And there was one more point that I wanted to make, that in trying to get an education, I've been relating my personal experience whilst trying to better my life and learn my culture and learn my heritage and deconstruct those feelings of shame of what it means to be a Gladu, let alone an Indigenous woman or a single mother. And that is, I don't expect to have moments where I should get a free pass. However, with content that it's like I'm reading my life on a piece of paper, or reading my mother's life on a piece of paper, having that being taught to me, and I'm going to be graded on that. And being expected to be an expert in these fields and to know how to articulate any sort of policy, what Gladu means, how to speak my language, what kind of ceremonies I've been a part of, any of those instances. And that's a very difficult position to be in, on top of being a student. It can be very difficult. And on the other side of that as well, I notice and I acknowledge that it is not our professors' jobs to counsel us through it. However, not sitting there to watch me squirm is a good start. And I don't speak for all students, but I do relate to everybody that has been speaking here, and it's extremely powerful, and my heart goes out to everyone, and I appreciate being given this opportunity to sit and speak, and to voice that, because it is very difficult to endure that, as well as, well, that's just how it is, we have to keep going. But that's exactly why we're here. So I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for listening, and thank you to everybody who's been sharing very powerful words. I've been moved to tears a few times here, so thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I know Michelle and I had a bit of a conversation about this the other day, and I just thought it was just so fascinating how we're able to make that circle, right? I was like, Michelle, we're making curriculum. Right? You're making curriculum right here, right now. You know, Lee, take notes. But some of the notes I wrote down here is the thing that came to my mind was that, you know, colonization has done such a good job to not only make it difficult for us to traverse systems that were never meant for us to succeed in. And unfortunately, universities were and continue to be a function of that. And, you know, you talked about, you know, you're not here to counsel me, but, you know, not just standing there and watching me squirm. And I was just thinking about the importance of empathy. And I don't think a lot of professors can immediately relate to that situation that we go through as Indigenous students. But at least they can say, I'm learning, I see you, I understand that there's more to this colonial project that I benefit from. And I also think the other important piece that you added was that colonization has also done a great job at separating us as Indigenous people from each other, where we even harm each other at times. And that's something that's just a reality for us in these experiences. But those moments when you can, you know, be with, try to figure out the right word, to be with your peers that understand and have gone through that type of struggle, you know, there's just a lot of great things that happen there. There's a common phrase we have in my community, native humor. It's like, and I think that's like a huge empathy tool, really, right? Like just to laugh, and like sometimes like other people will be like, why are you laughing about that? That's not really, and it's like, it's really our way of healing and the way we are able to connect with each other. And when those moments can happen, it's honestly really beautiful. So thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing that. Next up here, we have Alanna Hernal?
Yeah, Hernal. Yes.
It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving us this brave space, I call it, because we could share what's in our hearts and minds. So I wrote a poem, and Spirit told me that I'm going to be singing today, so I really prepared it last minute, but just know this is from my heart. So before I talk about the poem, I want to introduce myself. So I am Alanna Patricia Perez Hungriana Hernal. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am an Asian from the Philippines. I moved here in 2011, and now I'm a Canadian citizen. I am proud to be a Filipino. My MRE story started in 2014. I've been an MRE student since 2014 in the Bachelor of Child Studies program, represent early learning and childcare. I am taking a minor on entrepreneurship and innovation, so that's why I'm still in school, because I have a minor. I am the person who kept quiet for my first few years in university. For many of you, that might be surprising. Yes, I used to be quiet. I did not join any clubs at all. But then I had this realization one time that I need to take risk in joining groups. So I met people. And when you take risk, you put yourself out there and you get hurt. It's a double-edged sword. So there were jokes on war on drugs in the Philippines and our current president, which is President Duterte. And people think it's funny that people are dying there because of drugs. Young people are dying because of drugs. And it's not funny. So the poem is going to be about how my heart was broken by people around me. The poem is about how I was silenced continuously, that I was diagnosed with many mental illnesses. I am in and out of a mental institution too. I told people I am like Robin Williams. I am a high functioning person with mental illness. I show you my smile, joy, and happiness, but I actually wear a mask. Behind the scenes, I am surrounded with feeling of sadness. I feel alone even when I'm surrounded by people in a crowded room. Many students did not understand me, so they made me even feel alone, and they abandoned me when I needed the help. Social media and news are full of bad news these days. On March 16, a gunman murdered 8 people at several Asian-run massage spas in Atlanta, USA. Asians are dying. Old people, women. Call it what it is. It is a hate crime. Rise in anti-Asian hate crimes because of COVID-19. Widespread use of Kung flu, Chinese virus, Wuhan virus. People are being cuffed on in public, spitting on us, hurting us, slapping us, killing us. In Canada, in Vancouver, hate crimes against Asian Canadians rose to 717%. In Ottawa, hate crimes increased by 57%. Montreal, there's 30 hate crimes that is reported. Please call out microaggression and racist jokes. And also, please ask help. There's mental health resources out there. And if you are from a visible minority family, an Asian family, mental illness is stigmatized, but please ask for help. So now I'm going to be talking about the poem that I wrote, and it's titled Silenced I Am. Born in the Philippines, mama gotta leave. Left behind child I become. No mama, I start to grieve. Mask of happiness, I am numb. Years later, my family moved here. Thankful we are. My identity starting to disappear. People calling me fug or fresh off the boat, they say. My accent, I am ashamed. I myself I blamed. Once I was pushed around, scared I was. Myself is drowned. Asian woman I am. Big girl voice I want to have. People around me want me to be a lamb. They say no one will listen because I am a woman. They say no one will follow because I am Filipino. Stop! I did not. But people bully. People don't hear. People don't listen. Heartbreak turned into illness. Invisible disability I was diagnosed. Still, discrimination I experienced. Light at the end of the tunnel was fading away. I am fading away. The news I watch, old people in Asian communities hurting, dying. Why? Covert racism is here. Xenophobia is here. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Talk, we try. Use our voices, we try. But funds, money silence us. Policies silence us. What are we gonna do then? What are we gonna do then? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
So powerful. Thank you so much, Alana. Your voice is just so strong, and it's just very deep and such a message that we needed to hear in this session that we're having. So thank you so much, Alana. We're reaching the end of our event. We have a couple folks left here. And so I'm just going to move right on to the next person here. We have Alanna Providence. How are you doing, Alana?
I'm doing good.
That's
a little
good.
nervous. I'm in the hot seat now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm enjoying this wonderful day. Okay, Danate, hello. My name is Alanna Providence Touhou. I'm a member of Dinada First Nation. I identify with she, her pronouns. I'm a fourth-year Bachelor of Child Studies student. I am also a child and youth care counselor major. My home community is Chate, Alberta. I grew up on the reserve and I left at 15. Before I left, my mom, she had to talk to me about racism. I realized that this is my reality as an Indigenous woman. My mother told me to not to be afraid, to speak up, and to not let racism stop me from taking space. And it's something I always hold close to my heart. Today, I will share 2 experiences with you. My first experience was when I began my studies at MRU. I was in a class and a professor began to talk about Inuit people. She kept referring the Inuit people as Eskimos, and that's a racial slur. I was shocked that it came from a professor, and it bothered me because no one said anything. I later reached out to this professor and I informed her that that was an incorrect term. She was receptive, but with a hint of reluctance. She seemed to try to downplay it. In her defense, that's one of the terms she knows, the only term, actually. Another experience is being asked if I get free education because I am an Indigenous. I am asked this question numerous times, and I find it exhausting having to explain how it's not that way. I'm tired of explaining my own existence as an Indigenous woman. It is never curiosity about my Indigenous culture, but is always whether or not we get special privileges. The message I want to share today is that there should be more culture sensitivity awareness for both faculty, staff, and students. Another message is to speak your truth, because that is where these important discussions begin. Masi Cho, and thank you for listening to me.
Thanks so much, Alana. That's so important. And you know, sometimes you get an apology, right? But then it's met with a defense. And you know, one thing that comes to my mind in activist spaces is the difference between intention versus impact. You know, my intention isn't to be like this. I'm not racist. How dare you call me these things? But when really it's about the impact and the fact that Eskimo has that word. I shouldn't even be repeating it, but that word is a word that has been used to oppress many Inuit folks. And yeah, it's such an incredible message. Thank you so much, Alana, for sharing that with us. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, now we have Camille Rose Tabakla.
Hi, everyone. I acknowledge that my role is a Vice President of Student Affairs, but today I am sharing my stories and my poetry as a student. I'm removing myself from this role and showing you all my experiences as an MRU student. I am Camille Rose Kitig-Bak Tabakla. I came here in the early 2000s from the Philippines, and I apologize if I get a little emotional. Everyone's stories really have been touching me. So
it's totally fine.
Yeah. And immediately when I came here, I was bullied, from the color of my skin, to the language that I speak, to the food that I ate. And immediately, I forgot my own home language because I wanted to fit in. At the crossroads of everything, to this day, I still don't know, or am I comfortable about speaking in my home language due to the fact that I cannot connect with my own people from the Philippines. I graduated high school when I was 17, and I came to Mount Royal as my one and only choice of university in Alberta and in Canada. And at the crossroads of that, I was brought to the fact that I wasn't fully called Filipino and I wasn't fully called Canadian. So I didn't know where I belonged. And I was so ecstatic when I saw the MRU slogan was that you belong here. Now imagine how I felt when I sat in my very first MRU class at 8 in the morning at 17 years old, when the professor laughed at my last name and did not want to call me by that. And when I corrected him, he asked me if that is how you say it in Canada. Little does he know that my last name is the only thing that is connecting me with my home language and my people back in the Philippines. And that really hurt me And he laughed and laughed, and it grew louder in my head, and no one said anything. And I didn't know what to say then in response. Instead, I dropped the class within the first hour, and I contemplated my future at Mount Royal University. And now at 22, I've actually written a poem, and I was apprehensive about speaking at this event, but Spirit really helped me and really pushed me and encouraged the voice of a BIPOC student. So thank you, Spirit. And it is called, let me put it up here. It is called We Are Not All the Same. And I think that is a message that I want to really strictly encourage everyone watching, is all of us here have our own stories of our upbringings, our experiences at Mount Royal, and thank you for listening to what we have to say now, but this is just the start. And this is my poem. At 17, I was finally comfortable in my own skin, being able to walk up and down the streets, being comfortable in the place that I was in. But imagine walking into an institution where I'm supposed to belong, being plastered on the walls that you belong, but merely feeling like a pawn in their game. Because maybe perhaps to you, we all look the same. But honestly, how hard is it to say our names? We shrug it off and laugh, playing along, but in reality, many of us have grown accustomed to hearing our names wrong. The names our parents have worked to build us to get to where we are. But please go ahead and say I'm wrong, that I do not know the country that I reside in, that there's a difference between my name here and over there, but please, all I ask is for some courtesy and some respect. To not skip me or any of us like a song in your playlist that you titled You Belong. Because I simply sat and stared and pretended that I did, and the laughter in my head grew louder and louder. Because I'm supposed to look and sound like everyone else, right? But for one last time, when I walk the stage, I will correct my name, because we are not all the same. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Camille. That was so powerful. I think one thing that you've kind of highlighted is the importance that this isn't something always that something like, for Phil can do as like a policy. Sometimes this is cultural, based in how, we talk to each other as faculty, how you talk to, how you encourage faculty to be more respectful of names and of different cultures, because when we are able to do that, we're able to humanize each other. And I think that's such an important part of this journey we're going on as MRU. For the last person we have here, we have Steve Kootenai-Jobin. He's actually an alumni, but he's also the coordinator for the Indigenous Housing program. And I thought it would be really brilliant for someone, because one story I have is that in the Aniskum Center, I've talked to a lot of the workers there and previous workers, and I think that, it's so hard for Indigenous people to trust people. And some of the first people that you need to learn to trust when you're in Mount Royal are some of these workers that work in the Aniskum Center. So I thought I'd get Steve to talk a little bit about his story, whatever he'd like to share, and what his experience has been as both like as a student and as alumni, and whatever it is that he'd like to share. So Steve, take it away.
Oh, Shanish, thank you, Spirit. Ambawa Stitch, Oki, Dadanastada, Tanche. Hello, everyone. My traditional name is Nikoi Pixki, which translates to Holy Bird in Blackfoot. It was gifted to me by Elder Mixicum Clarence Wolfleg at Mount Royal University in ceremony in the teepee a couple of years back. My English name, as mentioned, is Steve Kootenai-Jobin. I'm a Yahi Nakota from Stoney Nation here in Treaty 7 territory. And I've been at Mount Royal for the last 6.5 years as the Indigenous Housing and Events Coordinator. But I planted my roots at Mount Royal long before. Like you, I was a student. I began in the Aboriginal Education Program, went on to do an Arts and Social Science diploma, and then completed a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. I'm a first-generation university student, and during my time in post-secondary, I actually began before truth and reconciliation was a commitment, and it's before indigenization began to take place. So that's actually how I ended up in sociology. I finally found a topic in an area that I could focus on and study that really got to help me understand and make sense of who I was and who my family were as individuals. You know, growing up in Calgary, I'm really fortunate to grow up in the Northeast, a very multicultural, diverse area. So, you know, Taylor, me, happy birthday on your special day. And I was fortunate to be around a diverse mix of individuals, people from all over the world. We were often bound and united, a lot of my friends coming from immigrant and refugee backgrounds, but we were also one of the only Indigenous families in the Northeast as well. So growing up in a very multicultural, diverse and unique neighborhood, I didn't know the amount of skills that I would get being able to interact with people, but it also afforded me opportunity to be proud of who I was as an Indigenous person. Although when I was younger, I had a hard time understanding what I had to be proud for. Like many other people who are on this call, and whether you're Indigenous, non-Indigenous, newcomer, if you attended school within Canada, you attended a colonial institution with colonial history and with colonial education. I didn't have an opportunity to learn about my people or make sense of what our realities were, but also how life really was for us as Indigenous peoples. Oftentimes we're plagued with stereotypes that bring us down. We're plagued with struggling with addiction. We're often plagued with free money. We're often plagued with being out on the streets in gangs. Every single one of the worst socioeconomic statuses, levels, or involvements Indigenous peoples are at the highest amounts of. And it was really hard, you know, growing up in Calgary from K to 12, and when I was getting into high school, to really have pride in who I was as a Nakota person. You know, of course I had pride, but I didn't understand who I was and who my family was. Getting into high school, and as I began to progressing and to be the first person in my family to graduate from high school, when I was in grade 12, I began to even judge my family, and I began to wonder, like, why aren't you a better parent? Why aren't you a better grandparent? Why aren't you a better auntie or uncle? Here's what my friends' families get to do. Here's the life that they get to live. For me and my family, every single day was a struggle for survival simply because of who we were as Indigenous peoples. Things like basic needs, food, shelter, and clothing, they are things that my family struggled with. My mother is a Mount Royal graduate as well from the social work diploma program. And during those times, she worked a lot of hours. I'm raised in a sober household, a traditional household as well. But we also didn't understand a lot of the inequalities, but my family also carried a lot of shame because my family for generations attended the residential school system. We also didn't get an understanding of the impacts of colonial policy, colonial history that has led to rapid amounts of systemic inequalities. And with us struggling to survive, coming in through Mount Royal, I really began to find my voice, but also make sense of who I was. I often share that my education journey was a healing journey for me. I began to be able to speak up in my classes and began to make sense of what colonization was. What does it mean to break through the cycle of poverty? How do people get stuck in the cycle of poverty? How do you decolonize? What is the difference between decolonization, indigenization, and reconciliation? And it was a really, really challenging time. And when you're raised in a society where you are systemically discriminated against based on the color of your skin, and for who I was as an Indigenous two-spirited person, it was very, very challenging. We can't be racist as Indigenous peoples, but we can't have a lot of internalized oppression. And that happens from us being raised in society where we are taught to look at shame and to look down and not have pride in who we are as First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples. The goal of residential school was to kill the Indian and the child, but the goal was also to get to the point of colonization after so many generations where it was our families that were doing the colonizing, or where our families took so much shame in wanting to not teach us our languages, our cultures, our spiritualities, our identities, because they have such the colonial mindset that they are not going to be worthy no more. I come from a community where our language is really strong. My mom moving away from the reserve when she was 10 years old to meet my grandmother who just got released from the penitentiary wanted to try to break a lot of those cycles. In doing so, she gave my brothers and I very English names so that we could fit in to a colonial society. And she made the act of choice within her mind not to teach us our language, because my mother struggled a lot being a First Nation woman in the 80s coming into Calgary, having a very strong accent, even with education, trying to move up that social and economic ladder. It was very, very challenging. However, with my mom being educated as well, she made sure to instill a sense of pride and identity within us. And I believe that's why my brothers and I have broken many cycles. We've reached levels of education in post-secondary that other members in our family have not, but we are just the beginning. And I hope that many more of our family members and community members continue on that way for us. Schooling was a very, very hard time. The first time stepping into Mount Royal and seeing Indigenous staff in the Easton Center, that was the first time I got to see Indigenous mentors. I've never once had an Indigenous teacher, nor did we have any Indigenous content. Being able to have role models, being able to see staff, faculty, individuals who look like you in positions of power, but also who have gone through similar circumstances and overcome these barriers to reach areas of success that you could only envision, that you don't get to grow up seeing. Those are very, very important factors. You get to deconstruct all of these ideologies and these notions, these understandings that you have towards other ethnic groups, but even for Indigenous peoples, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. That's where events like this are important for people to not only share their stories of struggles, but also ways that we can move forward as well. Race has been the passion of my education and my career thus far. As I shared with you earlier, sociology. I'm doing a master's right now that focuses on Indigenous education and also on leadership at the moment. And I've been fortunate to see the change at Mount Royal, but to also reflect, because I never left Mount Royal since I began attending as a student in 2007. You know, in a couple of years, I will have been walking the halls of Mount Royal for half of my life. And my journey in coming to Mount Royal, we have taken a lot of steps forward, especially in the last few years. But in my early years, we didn't have the supports in place. I was actually, as the Indigenous Housing Coordinator, I lived on campus in the Indigenous Housing Program the first year it was offered. At that time, they placed all Indigenous students on a single floor in West Residences. And I see some of the reasoning behind it, it's kind of the community side of it, but during that time, that's when I truly experienced a huge amount of racism and really just different treatment. Coming from the Northeast and moving to a residence building, an all Indigenous floor, I thought it was so cool. I was so pumped for it, but you know, we didn't have the relationships in place with the other departments at that time. The students who were coming through, there was no cultural sensitivity training. During that time, we were kind of siloed and off on our own island. And I remember that year in residence, you know, having students run down the halls going, whoo! They would post racist cartoons on the elevator doors or come and throw their empty beer bottles on our floor and even warn you if you're going to the 3rd floor West B. I remember my experience in residence being so terrible that I wanted to leave after the fall semester, but because I had signed a contract, I agreed to stay, and I moved out in April, and I never thought that I wanted to move back, and I didn't. The rest of my time at Mount Royal, I moved off campus with my brother. And I remember when I was finishing school and this job came up, and my brother's one who showed me, he's like, look, like, you know, they're calling for your background and stuff like that. And I remember thinking, I was like, do I want to be a part of a program that I did not enjoy? You know, where I felt very singled out because of my race, my identity. And I remember at that time, I was like, you know what? And my brother told me, he's like, why don't you go and see if you can make it better than what it was for you? And coming back and coming into Mount Royal as a staff, I've been very happy with the work that I've done in the housing program, with being able to bridge relationships, delivering anti-awareness initiatives, but seeing things like a commitment from our institution for indigenization, seeing big movements to address the inequities of the past, such as Indigenous admission policies, the growth of our Indigenous Student Center, the Easton Center, having Indigenous recruiters. We're taking a lot of steps in a good direction going forward, but we still have a very long journey to go. I also do feel that since the pandemic, I know COVID has been a huge focus and has changed our lives, but even in the last little bit since the pandemic and everything has started, I feel like even indigenization has taken a little bit of a backseat. We're seeing less things as in beginning events with land acknowledgements, even some of the presentations and so on, but I'm hoping that you know, we're still seeing movements, and I'm so happy and a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I hope that this just begins snowball effect of us beginning to work towards better race relations. But I could go on for so long, but I work with students all the time, and there's not a day that goes by when we're on campus where students aren't coming in who are Indigenous, who are sharing their stories, whether it's in public, in classes, on campus, on the bus, or anything. And we do a lot of liaising with it. But yeah, I think that's where I'll end. But thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much for the work that you do for our campus community and what you've shared and your experience. I think that's so important. And I gotta say, I got a little bit of anxiety for myself when you said, I'm gonna be here for half my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not gonna be me. I need out of here. Just kidding. But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap up here and let the leadership have a few minutes. We do have them till about 5:30. And so that's in about 20-ish minutes here. But I did want to have my last, just a few words from me and kind of a last note to the viewers that are watching. We've had a good sustainable number in the 70s of people watching, which has been really good. Like, I'm really surprised by that. But I did do the welcome, but I do have a few words of my own as a BIPOC student and as the first SAMRU president of Indigenous ancestry, of which I did not run on. It's actually the Aniskum Center that made me aware of that. So I always say, like, cool, but I didn't know that. But the fact remains that I am an Indigenous person of color. And so I wonder what that means for me, especially as a leader on the campus community, as we're talking as leaders. Am I immune to being problematic as a person of color? Am I immune to experiencing racism and homophobia as a queer person of color? The fact is that I'm not immune to experiencing racism and homophobia, obviously, as a queer person of color, but I'm also not immune to being problematic myself. And I think that's something we need to play around with what that means. The fact is that we can all be problematic and experience some form of discrimination in our lives. It is human to bump into walls. As human beings, we're flawed creatures who are prone to make mistakes. It is in our very nature. Lots of faculty have said things that are very kind to me. They said that I'm a person of grace, of patience, of level-headedness. And I hope that that's who I am. I hope that I'm someone that people can look up to as a role model for not only people of color, but for students and young people wanting to better themselves and be more than they are. But the truth is, like all of us, all those that are watching, we are flawed creatures. Are we in a time where we are evolving more and more to become better than we were 50 years ago? Maybe we are, but regardless of this evolution and growth, we are still flawed creatures. My own community has hurt me many times, and we've heard some stories about that happening tonight. But I have also hurt members of my own community. I have said and done things that I regret. We all have. We all have blind spots and biases and a need for growth. And racism is no different. In order for us to create a safer community for ourselves and for our neighbors, we need to recognize when we do create harm, to acknowledge it, and to strive to do better. And with that, I want to thank the participants. I hope that this experience will help create change for the viewers, that it will make our community leaders here who are participating think about the culture we need to continue to improve upon. But most importantly, I hope this gives hope to other BIPOC students who are watching this, to feel validated and to feel heard. So thank you so much. So I'll open this up for just a few quick reviews, a few quick thoughts from our leadership here. So yeah, what are your initial thoughts about this evening's open mic? Let's start with, Lee.
Thanks, River. Well, first of all, I promised to listen, and I did listen, and moved. Poetry, song, drawings, stories, I mean, so much to reflect on and to think about. I guess what I was inspired by Michelle's curriculum map that she shared with us, and I was thinking a little bit and doing my own little map and thinking about how this for me, on a personal level, as somebody who takes the project of decolonization seriously, it's what I do research on, it's what I try to do in my classes. And it reminds me of how important it is to make space, that we have to work against, I think, the idea of the forgetful curriculum. Because what we've heard here is the effects of overwriting, erasing, ignoring, especially, but not only, the knowledges that Indigenous peoples have and have had for millennia. And we need to really work on that, I think. And I think what I was probably most moved by, and it's on such a fundamental level, right, is the importance of names, naming names, and how important that is to fundamentally establish a good relationship is to start by recognizing the importance of a name, of our students' names. And, you know, it's so interesting because one of the hallmarks, I think, of us as teachers at Mount Royal is that we know our students' names. We have small classes. We want to know you. We want to, and then when I hear these stories, you know, I'm just really saddened, I guess would be one word, but also knowing that there are ways forward here. And I think that's what I wanted to end with is, you know, some of these pieces, you know, don't require us to change the whole colonial system as much as it needs to be changed, but that we could start on a much more accessible level, and that would just be remembering respectful relationships start with recognizing names. That's what I have to say for now.
No,
I'll probably more later.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to pick up on, recognizing, like, you know, we heard a few comments, like our identities with our names, with our culture, with our language, and I think it's really important for us to, you know, I think that's the benefit of having the small class sizes, is to be able to get to know each other better, and what that looks like in a cultural sense. Who could I pick on now here? Phil? Kind of like picking on you, so.
It's totally fine. I have a few things to say, but I want to start by really sincerely thanking everyone who shared their stories today. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable amongst friends. It's something else entirely to do that in an electronic forum that is very public in front of others, and it takes a lot of courage, and it's something I admire greatly, and I hope you know that these experiences that you've shared will have a meaningful impact on other people. It means something, and you should be very proud of what you've done today. And Spirit, you and SAMRU should be very proud of organizing such a great event and providing this space and opportunity. I do want to reflect on a few things that I heard today. One is that my background, my academic background, I've worked in student affairs for almost 20 years now, which probably feels longer than it sounds. But my academic background is in linguistics and applied language studies. And the experiences that were relayed today kind of reignited for me these thoughts about the connection between language and power, and the influence of language on conceptualizations of culture and identity. And it really came through in a lot of the stories. And you know, it reminds me of the importance of language on a daily basis and how much power it carries. In the areas of student affairs, international education, enrollment services, we're always trying to kind of create accessible activities to promote participation, to create inclusive networks. And there were things that were mentioned today that I think we can certainly use to assess and to evaluate the support that we're providing to students and to see if we can help to improve things. I heard about the representation of cultures and traditions across campus, both in physical artifacts and in people, and that these are incredibly important reflections for belonging in the campus community. I heard that avoidance is not an effective strategy. We need to talk about race. We need to talk about culture and identity. We need to make spaces for these conversations to occur and to support people to speak up when they want to participate and contribute. We need safe spaces for learning, and in that learning, we have to be aware that new emotions and experiences will often be evoked in that situation, and it will require additional spaces for empathetic exploration of those feelings. We need to find ways to improve our understanding of lived experiences, recognizing that our stories are very powerful. Lee touched on this, and I think it's absolutely true. Individuals make conscious choices about names, about their names, about pronouns, about titles that they use. These things carry meaning. They encapsulate our identities, and as a community, we have to make equally conscious choices about respecting these desired forms of address. The masks we wear don't often represent the person beneath, and we're not all the same. And I think possibly most importantly, or at least finally in this list, when we observe a situation where someone is being excluded, we need to find ways to offer support. We need to call out that behavior, and we need to find ways to include the individual to create a community of belonging that we really want to have. This is the very beginning of a process. There is a lot of listening and learning that needs to occur. For the students in the room, I can tell you from my own lived experience, having worked with students for a long time and seeing the change kind of across generations, and having the privilege of having two children myself, their own reflections of their understandings of culture and belonging, I know that change is possible. It is occurring. It's probably occurring way too slowly, but I notice a difference from one generation to the next, and these kinds of events and the voicing of your feelings are incredibly important drivers of that change. So thank you for involving me today.
Incredible. Thank you, Phil. That was very well said. Yeah, just everything that you said was so important, and I agree. I think that was something that was a common theme, is how, like I said, the reignited within you the importance of language and power, and really, I think that is what this is all really about, right? Michelle, what are your initial thoughts about this this evening? These might be our only thoughts, unless you folks have anything else to add afterwards, because we're running out of time here. But yeah, Michelle, what are your
well, really quickly? And I think Janet Miller reminded me at some point I turned on my camera, so I really hope you didn't see me blowing my nose and everything, but I suspect you did. You know what? Thank you for this. Thank you for sharing. It was an extremely touching, emotional, enlightening. I learned a lot about you all. You struck, oh, I'm gonna start to cry again. You struck chords. And so again, I just want to thank you. And to what was said, Phil said, like, we are incredibly proud of you. And if nothing else, when you leave these doors, you are strong people. You are navigators of change. You're going to make a difference. You guys are going to make the difference. And, you know, again, my commitment, you know, Lee and I talked about this earlier, and my commitment going forward, you know, as the staff association president is to really start to implement some changes and some educational opportunities for our staff that I think are really, they're foundational for making change as well. And so we recognize and we share what you're saying, what you're feeling, what you're hearing. I just thank you so much. Again, a profound sense of thanks. And I thank you for your time and thank you for including me.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any last comments from anybody? Otherwise, yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, I just, pick up Michelle and Phil's points. I think it's important for everybody here to know that faculty, I think staff and the university are that are committed to making changes to make this the place where everybody feels like they belong and do belong. And Phil's words about seeing changes over time, I mean, it's true. And I think that in telling your stories here so publicly, so bravely, you are a part of the change. This event is making a change. So thank you for that.
I think that's an incredible way to maybe end this event. Thank you so much to the leadership that shared your souls with us as we shared ours. And yeah, we're going to have this video. My comms team will fix it up with all the different video skills that they have. That I have no idea how they do that. I'm a policy studies student, but it will be available so you can watch parts of it. And I'm also hoping to have some little highlights from it posted on the SAMRU Instagram and so forth. So please look out for all of that. Thank you, all of those that participated. We're still at in the 16s for participants, for viewers, sorry. So that's an incredible number of participation. In terms of the participants, stick around because, Janet will have a few self-care things to share with you folks. But otherwise, at this moment, I will say that this concludes the inaugural event of the Loudest Silence and Anti-Racism Commemoration Open Mic. Thank you, everybody. Let me figure out how to